So for those of you that are agency folks, obviously, for us, there's a thing called a creative brief. Though some of us nod, where we go back and we say to the client, what are your goals, what are your objectives, who's your target audience, so on and so forth, and you create this beautiful document, and you chuckle, and you say, hey client, this is what we believe you want and your goals and objectives are, here's your target audience, and this is what we believe we heard from you. And sometimes the client goes, yes, and sometimes the client goes, maybe not, and she nods. This document is imperative. And the one thing that we do in the agency space is we typically go to the client, we have a set of questions, we gather this information. What we don't do all the time is do our own research, primary and secondary research. So this is a bit of a disconnect because there's a process to this. You have the brief, you bring it back, you get consensus on the brief, you bring it back to the team, you start the creative process. So now, from an agency perspective, when you fumbled the ball and have not done your due diligence from primary and secondary research, it slows down the process, it distorts the focus of what you're supposed to be creating towards or who that target audience is. So this is very much so the research, the brief, a very important part of the process. And for those folks of you that are actually the client, not engaging in this process and sharing the information in internal research can hinder this process and lessen the value of the product and or service that you're getting back from the agency. So this is very much so a two-way street. So basically, we're looking at not only the targeting information, but the psychographics, the demographics, those types of things, and looking at a small data set, so to speak, and saying, these are the people that come to X, Y, or Z, and these are the behaviors that they're supposed to have, and you're supposed to do this whenever you build a site, and you start to do those creative types of things. Now, for us, we look at this as an opportunity to improve the design process and keep the focus on the people that are actually going to do something. And you're looking at information, and you're talking about the persona and tying it back to the research that you did, the personas that you created. You with me? Now all of a sudden, we've got to figure out, well, we've created this beautiful website. It was based upon these 3 to 5 personas, and this is what was supposed to happen. Now, when they get to the site, the question, hypothetically, with the site, the question is, did they do what you thought, told, or implied for them to do, based upon that persona? In other words, if you went out and you saw John, and you told John, hey John, here's a great ad, come look at me, I'm pretty. It says, I've got a new car for you, and you say, John, fill out an application. John gets to the site. Did he do what he was supposed to do because he was part of your segments? This bit of information allows you to pulls it back to the research and the personas, and gives you an idea as to whether or not that actually worked. Did those groups convert? And if not, if so, are there insights there, or was it a huge oversight? Now we want to connect the research, the personas, and now the creative. Now, how do we do that? This is where we get a little technical. So let me ask in the room, how many of you have ever run pay-per-click advertising or campaigns on Bing? Bing ads? Got 1. How many of you run DoubleClick? Or have run DoubleClick? I got 1, 2. Okay? How many of you handle billboards? No billboards? We got 1 and 2 billboards? Okay. If appropriately tagged, again, if appropriately tagged, you can get some of that information, if not vast majority of it, into at least these 3. Hear what I just said? So, if you call via direct mail piece, and it is appropriately tagged, Google Analytics can capture that information. If you put a billboard up, complete apples-to-apples scenario. But if you put a billboard up, vanity URLs, PURLs, those types of things, pulls it in. But you've got to tag it. There aren't a lot of things in this day and age that cannot be tagged to measure. So once you've tagged that bit of information, it will come in to most systems as a campaign. Meaning, hypothetically, the Bryan Market Group, we run something on financial services. We do a lot of work in financial services space. If I tag something and we have a specific campaign that says financial services, X, Y, or Z, and I put a placement on morning call, I can go into the system and it will say the name of the campaign, the source location, morning call, and if I want to, I can put a keyword in there to differentiate between one piece of that copy and another piece of that copy, and I can even break it down by size. So if I wanted to run a 300 by 250 head-to-head and figure out which one worked better, I can do it in any of these three. Surveys and usability. So usability improved designs. We always look at sites, we look at our competition, we look at what they've done, we look at how effective it is, whether or not they hit the mark. Nobody knows unless you're on the back end, and you can look at how cute it is, but cute doesn't always convert. So the question is, does it help to streamline that process? Is it as user-friendly as it could possibly be? And even when you look at it at desktop, and you look at mobile device, you're looking at how it works in the browsers. And when we design, a lot of times this is what we're designing for. It's usually look and feel of a website. It's usually a brochure or a mobile app, those types of things. We're looking at look and feel of a number of different things. My personal preference, again, I'm a digital guy, that's my space, is I think it's easier to test those components in a digital space and implement them on print to save yourself time and money. That's the recommendation we usually, when we work with other strategic partners, let us test it on this end. We're fine with what you created. If it works in an A/B scenario, let's move it back out, because this is easier to change. With that being said, you want to test in multiple browsers, multiple devices, and figure out what that looks like, so you can expand off of it. And when I say that, you have, this is tablet version, so to speak, of the site. When I say that, you know what you can do in that confines of that space. So when you start talking about things that you typically need to associate with a piece of print material as it relates to a site or a brochure or something else that you're going to create, it gives you an idea of how to control the space. A/B testing, multivariate testing. Numerous platforms to be able to do this. So you create the ads, you create the information, are you testing it head-to-head? There's no logical reason why you can't do this. If you've got an ad, you can switch it up and pull it and run head-to-head comparisons, find out which ones work, and then, again, you set up the segments in your analytical solution, so it's even better after the fact because Danny told you to do it. So now you can slice and dice that information and get exactly what you want, figuring out which piece led to better engagement and higher click-through rates. Okay? That's just the tip of the iceberg. At the same time, the creative. Sometimes in the creative space, it's the placement and not necessarily the creative. So, when you run these ads, did you get better results in one segment versus another, and at the same time within each individual placement? Because you can run an ad, and it can perform, be the exact same ad, but if you put it in one place versus another place, it rocks. So not only have you gotten more information around the creative that's working, but you've also got greater insights into the placements that are working as well. This is very much so getting the data on PURLs, QR codes to be more effective. And essentially, you can tag the QR code just the same because it's a short URL, right or wrong. So the same question you asked before about social media and how you're tagging those components, you can tag this as well. So if you take a look, and for example, if for those of you that have if you go to the Bryan Marketing Group and fire off on one of the business cards, if somebody from my company ever hands you one, it literally, you can watch it change up top. And if somebody ever hands you a tag URL, you can see the parameters inside that piece that are feeding back into the analytical platform. So tagging that QR code helps. It helps to, when you tag it, it gives you information on which creative was most compelling in mobile, which creative led to calls, which creative led to sales, if you're tracking all the way through the process, if you have those capabilities. What it boils down to is better briefs. And when I say that, I go back to the individuals that are agency and also the individuals that are within organizations. The better the briefs are, the greater the probability that you're going to get what you want. Second piece, creative with a focus on analytics as well. So, you've got creative pieces, and I don't care what your client tells you, what your internal people are telling you, somebody's looking at the analytics somewhere. There's a hotshot kid that wants to be a superhero that's in your internal company. It's like, this whole analytics thing is pretty cool. I can see this, that, and the third. That's me. Okay? He's looking at that data. Somebody's looking at it. And they're going to bring it to the forefront and be like, well, why are we spending money on this? Eventually, somebody's going to say that. The creative's not working. The bounce rates when they get to the site are horrendous. And you spent all this time creating billboards, doing banner ads, and none of the jobs. Supportive data for client positioning and internal positioning. It's all about, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. So, with that being said, you need to position it appropriately for the internal as well as external stakeholders. When you don't, you will run into problems. Use the data, tie it back to the creative. Use the creative, tie it to the data. You want to increase relevancy among your target audiences. So, let me ask you by show of hands. Who does not want to increase relevancy amongst their target audience? Show of hands? Any takers? When you have the data, you have a relationship, you can tie it back. It gives you have a greater statistical probability of hitting the nail on the head as opposed to not using that information. And when I say this, everybody's got clients. Whether it's your boss is a client, you have a business unit that's a client, you're an agency person, you've got a number of clients. Happier clients, happier stakeholders, better probability of more projects. If you have happier managers, your boss, you're the digital marketing manager, digital manager within your company, director of marketing. If your boss is happy, and you're saying that this creative is working, here is the data, here are the sales and leads that we're getting. The problem that I'm seeing is that I've got the data on the creative, I've got the data on the leads. Our conversion rates stink. Help me understand why. That is a rock star in the making. Your boss, that's a pretty good question. What is sales doing over there? What is sales doing over there? We need to pull them in and have a conversation.